We say to these things, there's still cancer and so much disease. What shall we say to these things? So much hurting and broken esteem.
So many questions, but still one answer.
If God be for me, who can be against me? If God is with me, whom shall I fear? If no one knows me, still his heart adores me. I am safe, I am loved, I am healed. What shall we say to these things? So much violence, it's getting hard to believe. And what shall we say to these things? So many people hurting with broken esteem. So many questions, but still one answer. If God be for me, who can be against me? If God is with me, whom shall I fear? If no one knows me, still his heart adores me. I am safe, I am loved, I am. Say, if God be for me, who can be against? If God is with me, whom shall I fear? If no one knows me, still his heart adores me. I am safe, I am safe, I am loved, I am. Now what can wash away my sins? Sing it. And what can make me whole again? Yeah. We're singing, oh, precious is the makes me white as snow. It was no other found, I know it was nothing that I could do, no words that I could say,
No price
that I could pay, nothing but the blood of Jesus. We're singing, oh,
precious is the flow
that
makes me white as snow.
it was no found, I know it was nothing If you are with me, whom shall I fear? If no one knows me, still his heart adores me. I am safe, I am loved, I am healed.
I am safe, I am loved,
I am healed.
I am safe, I am loved,
I am healed.
I am safe, I am loved,
I am healed. If you are for me, who can be against me? If you are with me, whom shall I fear? If no one knows me, still your heart adores me. We are safe, we are loved, we are. Can we sing that? Say, if you are for me, if you are for me, who can be against me? You are with me, if no one knows me, still your heart. Say, I am safe, I am safe, I am loved, I am. Say, if you are for me, if you are with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, a very pleasant evening to you. I'm going to ask at this time that you join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to you for this another opportunity we have to share in this virtual space. We crave your presence as we are in this meeting. We ask for your guidance. We ask that the presence of the Holy Spirit will be the motivating factor. We ask that you would give us openness of mind and heart. And we ask that we will be very aware of the subject we are discussing. Lord, had it not been for you, then we know that nothing that's good that has happened to us would have been possible. And so we are very grateful to you this evening for health, for strength, for the ability to listen, for the ability to learn, for the ability to contribute to the well-being of others. And so we ask now that you would just stay with us for this time that we will spend together. We ask a special direction and help for our presenter. And we ask that those who are in the virtual space will find it easy to participate, to send in their questions and to give perhaps interjections. Thank you now for all that you have planned for this afternoon. We look to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Brothers and sisters, let me give you a very special welcome to this, our third session in our webinar series. And this evening, we are pleased to have you in the virtual space. And if you're just joining us for the first time, then you would have missed two very important and beautiful sessions that went ahead. But suffice it to say you're here, so we want to say welcome. We give a special welcome to our presenter this evening, Dr. Alcon Barnett. He's the one who will be presenting to us, and we ask that you would keep him in your prayers as we deliberate this afternoon. The subject we discuss will be on mental health. And I want you to listen to this recording from our Minister of Health and Wellness in Jamaica, Dr. Tufton, and take note of the interesting dialogue that he will have with us.
Mental health is a priority of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Portfolio Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says mental health interventions have become even more significant due to issues that have surfaced or might occur as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says a lot of Jamaicans are struggling with elevated levels of anxiety, stress and depression. His comments were made at the latest COVID-19 virtual conversations. It preceded World Mental Health Day, observed on October 10.
What is also emerging from our mental health teams on the ground is that conditions such as acute psychosis, adjustment disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, and protracted grief reactions appear to be on the rise. In addition, we have detected, courtesy of the platform afforded by the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the mental health page, which I would like to promote, www.moh.gov.jm/mental health stories, that a number of Jamaicans are actually struggling with depression during this period. So our older persons are taking the COVID-19 threat seriously based on this study and are doing what is required to stay safe. Approximately a fifth think the guidelines, however, are difficult to do and impossible to continue with for a prolonged period, while some 34% report facing a lack of loneliness, feeling left out, feeling isolated. It is the lack of companionship and the feeling of isolation that we're seeking to counter, at least in part through the work of this mental health program that we're putting in place.
At the same time, he says children and youth are also facing psychosocial challenges due to the pandemic, which has kept them away from friends while moving them into a world where teaching and learning have to take place online.
Preliminary findings from a recent study by public health and aging expert, Professor Eldemar Shearer, provides us with some very important insight. Professor Shearer, who was on our COVID conversations last week when we were live from Mandeville, did a sample size assessment of some 228 persons aged 65 years and older. And the majority of them, with the majority of them being female, some 74%. Among the things she found, which confirms our concern and our conclusion, is that 89% of our older persons are leaving home less than before the first stay-at-home order in March. 22% reported canceling a doctor's visit or other healthcare appointments. Only 20% reported in-person visit with relatives, which means that even their loved ones are no longer visiting them, and out of a genuine fear that they may be transporting the virus to them in their setting. But the inadvertent consequence of not visiting is the loneliness, the depression, and other negative impact. And 98% of that sample said they stayed in touch via the phone primarily.
So you have listened to Dr. Tufton, a contracted version of that presentation that he had. But that will give you an idea as to where we're going this afternoon. My name is Jennifer Mullins, and I am your moderator for this evening. The gentleman who will be our presenter this evening is Dr. Alcon Barnett. He is a clinical psychologist, rehabilitation consultant. He has a doctorate of psychology degree in clinical psychology from California Southern University, a master's of science degree in clinical rehabilitation from Georgia State University, Atlanta, USA, and a BSc degree in psychology from Northern Caribbean University. He worked in education, probation, mental health, and the juvenile justice system in both Jamaica and the United States for several years. He's a member of the Honor Society for International Scholars, Georgia State University since 2005, and the Jamaica Psychological Society. He's currently working with the Western Regional Health Authority as a regional clinical psychology for the National HIV STI TB program. Dr. Barnett is also interested in research and includes subjects as psycho-oncology in the Caribbean, traumatology and psychotherapy among adolescents, and the psychological aspects of HIV and AIDS. Now you would agree with me that the mental health challenge is real in Jamaica. And so, amidst the COVID situation that we've been facing since March of last year, it is really a fitting subject for us to delve in. And from all indications, Dr. Barnett is very equipped and perhaps the most appropriate person at this time to share on this topic with us. So I'm going to ask you to put your hands together as we welcome Dr. Barnett to take the proceedings from here.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Are you hearing me okay? Am I clear, loud and clear?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. If you don't mind.
No, that's good enough.
Okay. Let me. Okay, I'm hearing a background sound there, so. Okay. Okay, am I loud and clear? Give me an indication.
You are loud and clear, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Reverend Mullins. And it's indeed a privilege and a pleasure to be here and to be among the saints. Getting a feedback somewhere. Okay. Okay. And thank you also to Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, thank you for inviting me. And we have a brief presentation, but within the presentation, there's so much information that you probably know already, information that you'll be getting for the first time. And so it would be good to be a part of this presentation, not just to sit and listen, but to ask questions. Reverend Mullins, are you the moderator? Do you want questions during the presentation or after?
It's up to you, sir.
Okay, well, you can ask questions. You know, I'll be going a little fast, so you can stop me here and there, and I'll probably call on some people sometime to give an input. I hope that's okay too. And so it is indeed a pleasure. And so I'll be looking at mental health from a general standpoint, especially as it relates to COVID and the advent of COVID. We know that COVID-19 have in some ways disrupted the world as we know it, you know, our way of being, our way of operating, or routines. And so, as Rev said, this is fitting. The great American poet, Mark Twain, said, "Courage is resistance to fear. Mastery of fear, not absence of fear." And we know that fear is an emotion that has been exacerbated throughout this pandemic. You know, mankind has felt fear like never before. Romans 5 verse 3 says, "And not only this, but we also exalt in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation brings about perseverance." And so I want us, in order to develop mental wellness, to focus on perseverance. How will we get through this? The lockdowns, the quarantines, the economic upheavals, the school closures. We have, so far, it has been a challenge. You know, we have seen many disruptions. So towards the end of this presentation, we'll explore some self-care. What have you been doing to care for yourself and to care for your loved ones? So those who are not here, it will be great if you can share some of the information that will be mentioned in this presentation. And we all know this face, the great civil rights leader, Nelson Mandela, said, "Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got up back." And we're going to talk about resilience and how do we as a people, church, as a nation, how will we get through this? Because in some ways we fell, in some ways we have been under excessive pressure. How will we get back up? How will we get through this and be strong? And so we know COVID-19 pandemic have led to a great, significant degree of mental health crisis across the globe, worldwide. This pandemic has resulted in one of the most disturbing upheavals of the education system. 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries, and all continents have been affected. Even during the Great Black Plague and the Great Spanish Flu of 1918, 1919, we have never seen the entire world come to a standstill. You know, it's almost like a movie, just seeing people walking around in masks. It's like something you would read about, even the Bible, about the last days. This is nerve-wracking for us, you know. It is nerve-wracking for many people, and especially the children. COVID-19 pandemic have caused the greatest or unprecedented job losses never before seen since the Great Depression. And we know during the Great Depression in the United States and worldwide, food was short, stock market crashed. You know, it was devastating. And so this is that time again, in more ways than one. And so even more statistics. COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted or halted critical mental health service in 93% of the countries. And according to World Health Organization survey, this is extremely significant. Excessive fear, stress, anxiety, and especially among the vulnerable. And so we see that the pandemic have exacerbated anxiety, nervousness, the what if question, what if, what's next, as well as depression, hopelessness, helplessness, and even people questioning their self-worth. But even more, we have noticed that women and younger people have been extremely affected by the pandemic, and especially as it relates to their mental health issues. Poor sleep quality have increased, and that, for having poor sleep quality, early morning awakenings, can not being able to fall asleep, does affect mental health in general. And so there are so many things that we can look at. Look at rumination, people, the overthinking, what if, along with social isolation. So isolation is not just caused by quarantine, being locked away, reviewing your status as it relates to the virus, but also remote work, remote learning. Remote learning, we as human beings, as human organisms, we tend to be social creatures. We are social. And the fact that we have to be isolated and isolating does affect our brain function and affect our general mental well-being. So the psychological stress of sheltering in place, as I mentioned, has extremely disrupted the family. I know in the early stages of COVID in Hong Kong, they had to separate family members. And, that had caused severe trauma in some cases. And even increased stigma and discrimination, because even though most of that had died to an extent, even the hospital systems, you'll find that people are afraid to go near certain people who are recovering from COVID. Taxi men don't want to go to specific places because they heard that there's a COVID spread out at a certain district. And so stigma and discrimination is a factor. Even you look at how this has affected mental health, we call it psychopathology, acute panic. A lot of people feeling like their heart want to jump out of their chest, panic attacks, anxiety issues, and trauma-related issues. Because remember, COVID disease have brought a level of trauma, especially for children, and we can look at that a little more. But think about violence in the home, domestic violence. Worldwide, it has been reported by different agencies, including the police, that domestic violence have increased among the populations, different populations. So we talk about domestic violence, we talk about intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and sexual abuse, especially among children. And so children even witnessing more domestic violence, it's going to affect them later on. Studies upon studies have shown that, and so domestic violence is a major factor. Now, domestic violence, as I mentioned before, had affected children and is going to affect children. These are the residual issues that will come up after. But right now, we're seeing the effects. Hundreds of millions of children around the world will likely face increased threats to their safety and well-being. We know about the increased incest, which is so sad, so painful, even among our Jamaican brethren and sisters. Increased incest among young people because they're in home, they're there, predators are there. We notice gender-based violence. A lot of men have lost their jobs. A lot of men, when they lose their jobs, it does affect how they view themselves as men. Am I man enough? And sometimes they will, especially if they're not grounded and attached, they will take that anger, that stress out on the women and even the children. And so there's a lot of growing exploitation, reported cases, social exclusion, caregiver issues. Natural disasters, let's look at it. COVID is in a sense a natural disaster, but on a global scale. Natural disasters and crises catalyze or increase immense stress, as we know. And so it increased partner violence. If I don't know if anybody remember Hurricane Harvey. Anybody remember Hurricane Harvey? In Texas. We know that during and after Hurricane Harvey, there was an increase in child abuse because people couldn't get resources. The adults in the home were stuck with each other. People weren't able to go to work. And so, based on the Hurricane Harvey example, we are noticing the same trend with COVID-19, increasing domestic violence. And when domestic violence increase, children can develop what we call ACEs. And what this is adverse childhood experiences. That means we are not actually seeing some of the effects of COVID-19 right now. And that is very fearful, even for us as psychologists and church members. And we're worried about the adverse childhood experiences. And we know that children who have at least 3 to 4 adverse childhood experience have a shorter lifespan, and they say early death, are more prone to disease and disability, social problems, substance abuse problems, adapting higher risk behaviors, high risk for HIV/AIDS, and social emotional impairment. Even some children who are prone to domestic violence and sheltering in home and not being able to go outside and play have been affected and are being affected. And so going back to school, we might see more attention problems, probably more concentration issues. And all of this more than likely coming from some of the negative effects of COVID-19. But remember, I'm highlighting some of the negative effects, but remember, within the negative effects, there are also positive aspects to this. Many parents have never looked in their children's eyes for a while, for a couple of months. But COVID, due to the home back to forth, they actually have the ability or the capacity to stay longer time with their children, to bond more with their children. And then again, the negative side to that is that they might be trying to get some work done on the computer, but the child is in the way. So it is a form of chaos in a sense. But look at the negative effects of trauma resulting from the residual issues related to COVID on the child's brain. Look at a 3-year-old child. You notice a normal brain, how big it is in volume, and a child who has been prone or exposed to extreme neglect from parents or abandonment, you notice the size of their brain. And so we are looking down the road that there might be some negative effects, but there's always a way out. God has prepared that for us. Now, the effects of COVID on children and adolescents in general, we know the pandemic, the long-term consequences, which I just discussed, we are predicting that there might be some serious long-term consequences. In practice, I'm noticing extreme self-harming behaviors from children. Notice more girls are cutting, talking about they wish they would die, suicidal ideation. And so we are noticing specific behaviors from children and adults, which is very worrying. So one of the things with COVID is that it has introduced fear and anxiety on a scale never really even seen before. When we are facing crisis of any sort, we know fear kicks in, anxiety is inevitable. But we know fear and anxiety, in a sense, especially anxiety, is normal. However, when it gets to a point where you're constantly feeling anxious, then you know your mental health is at risk. So natural responses to challenging situations and danger of uncertainty has caused what we call pandemic fear. Now, the fear driving the pandemic is almost worse than the pandemic itself. And so as a result of the fear, many people have gone into denial. The fear is too much. The weight is too heavy. So I'm talking to a young lady recently, and she's saying that I don't think COVID exists. So she's in denial now. It's too much for her. So she just tuned out. And so coronavirus anxiety has outpaced the virus itself. Managing anxiety is all about working with real evidence. So right now we are seeing a lot of conspiracies around vaccine, around the chip, around the 666, around the New World Order dimension. There's so much going on. Where are you getting your information from? and how is it affecting your mental health? So there are two ways we propose to structure your thoughts. One is diffusing all the noise by just noticing. So you have over 500 thoughts a day or more. Not all thoughts are facts. How do you diffuse your thoughts? By focusing on what is important, what you value, what you can change, and what you can't change. And just allowing the noisy thoughts just to float by. And the other one is restructuring how you think. Some of us think in catastrophic terms. This is how a basic thought processes work. We have the thoughts, then we have the feelings, then we have the behavior. So the thoughts might be, you have a thought, you're in a taxi and someone sneezes on you. Somebody sneezed from me yesterday. Immediately you have a fearful response, then you become anxious. This anxiety now leads to you running to the shop buying 50 different pills and herbs to try purge the coronavirus. Or maybe you're so hyper vigilant that you don't want to play with your kids. And so the key thing to this process to avoid all the behavior that might cost you physically and financially is to correct your thoughts. How do I know the person who sneezed on me had coronavirus? Did I take my vaccine? How is my immune system? You know, instead of going to bed and repeating these things. So it's important to explore your thoughts. What are you imagining? We have a thought pattern that is extremely salient in the pandemic, and we call it the catastrophic thinking, thinking that the worst thing is going to happen. You know, we have been through some of the most, we have been through so many pandemics and epidemics. We have been through AIDS, we have been through the smallpox and cholera, and we have survived as a race, as a nation. We have pulled through. And what is the worst? I mean, back in the Spanish flu days, we didn't have the technology we do now. You know, we didn't have the capacity to actually make vaccines in the fast and in the rapid way we did now. You know, in almost 6 months, we developed like 3 different vaccines, never seen in history. And so sometimes we think, you know, we blow things. In other words, we make a mountain out of a little mole. And that's a form of thinking that we must correct. And what about COVID stress? How have COVID impacted your stress level lately? I wonder if Laurel can speak to that. You can unmute your mic if you choose, Laurel, or anyone who want to contribute. How has COVID impacted your stress levels? How have you coped with it? Who's there on the mic?
You can raise your hand, participants, if you want to respond, please.
Great. Okay, this is interactive, so it's okay. You can ask questions, you can interact and explore. Anyone want to make a comment about stress or maybe what you have noticed with colleagues or family members or even people on a whole, you know? What has your experience been like as it relates to stressors? No one want to comment?
I get the impression they want to listen to you some more.
Oh, they want to listen some more. It is interactive, you know, so you can talk about your stress. Is that you stop eating so much or you start eating too much or you find that you can't go to bed or you're ripping and running all over the place. All right, so look at this zebra, you know, he's losing his stripes, you know. So stress, which is the body's way of coping, but not having the capacity to cope. You know, it can cause physical issues, can cause cognitive, which is concentration. I have a brother who was so stressed that he didn't cook for a couple of weeks. And a doctor told him he needed to start cooking at home, but he couldn't find his bag when he was doing his exams. And after 2 weeks, he decided to buy some meat and cook. And when he opened the freezer, there was his bag. 2 weeks he couldn't find his bag, and he finally found it. Because what? Stress can affect your concentration, your attention. A lot of us as Jamaicans, this is new to most of us in our lifetimes. Even if you were exposed to the 1918 pandemic, I don't think most of us have been exposed to something like this. And so stress also affects your mental health. And stress can lead to mental disorders. A lot of us have stomach ache, headache, sleep disturbances, and we don't realize it's stress. We run to take a pill. And maybe if we just take a breather, just a little belly breath, the headache would be gone. Or probably if we distracted ourselves with a little walk, a little 5 minutes walk, because it's stress. Now, chronic stress can lead to anxiety, and a lot of anxiety can lead to anxiety disorder, where your hands shake all the time, you're having significant worry. Sometimes you're worrying and don't even know what's the source of worry. And we know stress can affect your blood pressure and weaken your immune system. And it's the same immune system that you're trying to preserve to fight the COVID. Stress can actually depress your immune system. Because when you're stressed, you catch colds easier and you easily get sick. Stress can also lead to depression, obesity. A lot of us having the COVID belly. Show hands those who are having the COVID belly. And remember, heart disease, especially if you are prone to it. So stress, managing stress is extremely important. So people who experience extreme stress, you know, they might overheat. A lot of people have bad coping like cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, or even workaholism. The tendency to be so caught up in your work that you don't have time for self-care. You notice you're snapping at your husband and your wife, being short-tempered. So one of the key to mental wellness, and this is what I want to impart to you today, is how do we develop resilience? Resilience meaning that you can bend. The storms of life can wave. You look at the tree on the slide, but it will never break. And I'm charging you today not to break. And that's where your faith comes in, and understanding mental hygiene and mental wellness. So what is resilience? Well, resilience is a process of adapting well in the face of adversity. Now, we all have adversities. Adversities is a part of life. As the scripture says, many are the afflictions of the righteous. But it also says what? Affliction is our greatest teacher. And so adversity can teach. But what resilience is to face the adversity, the trauma, the tragedy, even the threats of life, and yet overcome and rise above. So it's really about bouncing back, you know, from financial stress, from workplace stresses. How do we bounce back to preserve our mental health? As Dr. Tufton mentioned in the clip earlier, and thank you for sharing, Reverend Mullins, was the importance, or is the importance, of preserving your mental health, because there's no physical health without mental health. You find hundreds of people on the wards who are there for physical ailments, yet the root cause is mental health issues. And so resilience is really bouncing back from the difficult experiences. It can also involve profound personal growth. And so let us look at some of the characteristics of resilience. First one is internal locus of control. What that is, believing and understanding and accepting that you have the capacity to control certain aspects of life. Not all aspects, but knowing what you can control and knowing what you can't control. It involves building your self-esteem, having personal goals, because the thing with COVID, a lot of people decided they're going to college, they're going to put on a bathroom or a kitchen, but their goals were shattered or dismantled due to the pandemic. But what about a sense of meaningfulness? Most mental disorders, especially the ones, the depressogenic ones, or disorders coming from having to do with depression, the root cause is lack of meaning. What does all of this mean to you, even as Christians? Resilience is your ability to use past successes to confront current challenges. What is it that you did in the past that proved to you that you can get through this? Will this last forever? How will this build your relationship with your family, with your friends, with God? Resilience is also viewing stress as a challenge, a way to make you stronger, build muscles. What about humor, patience, tolerance, and resilience is adapting to change? But one of the things with resilience is not sitting down in your bed and curling up, but being action oriented. Get out of that bed, move, keep moving, keep growing. When you stop grow, that's it. Even retirement, keep growing. Have strong relationships and don't be afraid to ask for help. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to go to your brother or sister and say, hey, you know, it's tough. It's hard. I can't handle the kids. Financially, I'm embarrassed. The tourism industry laid off thousands. It's coming back slowly. But it's okay to ask for help. And in this context, faith. I don't have to explain what faith is. So remember to prioritize relationship. Don't focus on the toxic people and hang around them. Focus on people who build you, who strengthen you. Look for opportunity. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to know the part of yourself that you have never seen or known before. Do something different. What about doing bird watching? Read the Bible, different books, study them. What about painting? What about learning different aspects? What about doing a course? Even an online course. And most powerful and intriguing aspect of building resilience is learn to accept change. Change is a natural part of life. Certain goals or ideals may no longer be attainable. Accepting that, listen, I wasn't able to do this because this virus came in and shut down my bonus. Yet, I can get through this. I can accept that it happened, and maybe I can find a different approach to reaching my goal. So take action. If you don't take action, you remain paralyzed. And remember to stay flexible. I always say when I work at the substance abuse place, blessed are the flexible. See, notice my hand, how flexible it is. Blessed are the flexible, for they'll never be bent out of shape. What does that mean? Flexibility in your thoughts. Some people are rigid. If you notice, most mental illnesses come from rigidity of thought. You know, not change. This is how I set it. But remember, life happens. You don't know the next 5 minutes. So it's okay to be present and to be flexible when the storms of life come. And they say when Christ is in the vessel, you can smile at the storm. So one of this, we're going to look at the self-care aspects now. We just mentioned resilience, which is like the root of self-care and protection against specific mental illness. Even if a specific mental so-called disorder exists in your family, by being resilient, by having social support, you can overcome it. Just like diabetes, if you don't eat certain sugars, even though it run in your family, you may never get it. So just like how you go to the gym and build muscles, you build resilience. Teach your children resilience. Don't spoil them. Let them know life is a challenge that you must meet. And so let us break our perfectionism. We're not perfect. It's okay to be vulnerable. And you can have a little fun while doing it too. A lot of mental health issues are grounded on perfectionism, not wanting or not treating yourself kindly when you make mistakes. We know about Edison who invented the light bulb. He failed 100 times. And now we have lights that we can light up the computer and we can do remote learning right now. So it's okay. And set boundaries. My brothers and sisters, set boundaries. Set emotional boundaries, even with your spouse. Set boundaries with your kids. It's me time now. Or it's wife and husband time now. Or it's time for me to go home to my family. Too many yeses. A lot of us are yes men. It's okay to say no at times. Yes, you're your brother's keeper. And yes, you support your brother and be there for them. But at times you have to focus on your self-care as you run your battery out. So mental health can quickly erode in the face of too many yeses. Remember, overwork. Show hands those who are overworked. Anybody here think they might have been overworked? Maybe. Infobesity. Since COVID manifested, what, 2 years now? Almost 2 years. We wake up, we watch TVJ, 12 o'clock. We watch TVJ again, 7 o'clock. Then we go to CVM. Then if we have cable, go to CNN and Fox. That's too much. And that will hurt. And just like obesity that makes you bloated, infobesity is too much. Turn off the television. And sometimes turn off the WhatsApp. Don't go to bed with WhatsApp under your pillow or your phone. Discipline yourself and do a news fast. How about that? How about doing a new fast? Is that a challenge that you would want to take up? Fasting from the news. Too much information. Be still and know. Psalm 45, verse 10 or 46. And just fast from the news. Give yourself a break. Do some prayer. Spend some more time with your family. Plant a garden. Engage in mindful living. What that means, that increase your brain chemistry and lower your cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And when you're stressed, that hormone increases and can cause a lot of heart issues, overweight. And so be still, which is staying in the present moment. The past will make you depressed. I should have, could have. The future, thinking too much in the future will make you anxious and develop an anxiety issue. What would it be like to be still, to be present, to work in the moment, knowing that you have your goals and your values? Work in the moment. And so when it comes on to COVID itself, protecting yourself, we touch our face, we touch our mouth a lot. We have to learn different ways how to cut that down. I don't know, we don't do panic buying again, but we are panicking now over the vaccine. Is this vaccine going to hurt us in the next 2 years? We're panicking over, will this end? No, we have the Delta variant. Is that another form of anxiety for you? Or are you still? And so stress management is important, even within the anxiety. So COVID can exist, and I can still have a rich and fulfilling life, and I can still read my Bible, and I can still take a warm shower. Live in the and. Tribulations will exist, and I can still enjoy my dinner. So stress management involves reducing the arousal by the way you think and by the way you breathe. And so I always do this at presentations, introducing to some people the belly breath. So instead of breathing from your chest, you breathe from your belly. We tend to breathe from our chest, and this will trigger the stress response. It is more prudent for you to breathe from your belly. In with your belly protruding and out. In and out. Try that. In and out, instead of in and out. If you notice how a baby breathes, it's usually from her abdomen, lower abdomen. And so practice. Don't stress yourself. Don't try too hard. Just be gentle with yourself and breathe. So self-care, what about sleep? Most mental health issues that someone has already or have not developed yet are as a result of negative, bad sleeping patterns. Get some sleep, at least 5 to 6, 7 hours. The older you get, sometimes the less you sleep. But sleep. If you have any difficulty sleeping in your bed, get up out of your bed, drink something nice and warm, and then go back to bed. If you feel sleepy. But sleep is extremely important. Exercise, you don't have to walk 50 miles, 20 miles, 1 mile. You can get up and exercise for 10 minutes. Very
Dr.
important for
Barnett,
heart. Go ahead. Right.
I, I'm just wondering, how can one really sleep for 5, 6, 7 hours
Mhm.
when that person is stressed?
Okay. Thank you so much for that question. Now, there are two things. Lack of sleep can actually induce stress, as well as stress can induce lack of sleep, which is sometimes it borders on what we call insomnia. So, one of the key things to bear in mind when you're stressed and you're struggling with sleep is to first understand your sleep cycle. And after you understand your sleep cycle, then you use certain techniques, which I'll go through now, to reduce stress. One of the first ones I mentioned was a simple little exercise, but not just before you go to bed. At least 2 hours or so before you go to bed. Social support is extremely important to reduce stress. If you have ruminative thoughts just before you go to bed, then you're going to do what we call living in the now, which is an exercise by maybe having something nice and warm. Remember, no caffeine, no green tea, no coffee, no blue light. Put away the cell phones because they can actually induce stress too. Who is going to call? Who will call after? Who do I need to contact? Put away all phones. So there are so many different stress management techniques, Rev, that you can use to get back your balance so as to induce sleep. But one of the things is if you realize you can't sleep, don't try too hard to sleep in the bed because the brain will see the bed as adverse to sleep. So it'll be best to get up out of the bed, just relax a little, maybe read a little boring book or something. And when you feel sleepy, you drag yourself in the bed. Make sure the room is comfortable, sheets are nice and cool. And if you have so much on your mind and you can't sleep, you know, the next day you find someone who's confidential, who's trustworthy, where you can vent, maybe. Someone you're comfortable with. But you definitely have to reduce stress. And remember nutrition too. I'm not a nutritionist, but there are certain things we can mention towards the end. And here it is, cooking healthy food. Since COVID, a lot of us have been eating out. And all the high salt, all the high sugar can induce some form of stress. Outdoors, Jamaica is a beautiful country. When's the last time you went to the river, look at the beach, get some sun? Get some sun. Yeah, since COVID, everybody been running down this vitamin D. Jamaicans, it has been shown, have a deficiency in vitamin D, yet we're one of the hottest places on earth. How is that possible? Especially the kids. So get some sun, eat healthy, and prayer. Prayer is an antidote to stress also. A nice little meditation before you go to bed. I hope I kind of answered some of your questions, Rev.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
I would
Very good.
like if someone could probably tell me how they reduce stress for them, personal stress, because reducing stress can be personal. You don't have to have a so-called expert come in here to tell you how to reduce your own stress. And we know we have comfort food, so a lot of people engage in comfort
Oh,
foods.
yes.
You tell her that chocolate and if you get eat chocolate, eat dark chocolate. Huh?
Ice cream.
Ice cream and fatty food,
Yes.
some nice potato chips. So one of the key things, as you mentioned, that too, is being kind and gentle to yourself. Being compassionate. I know we have to be our brother's keeper, and treat our brother as we treat ourselves, as one of the commandments say. But one of the things within that also is self-care. Not being lovers of yourself, but taking care of yourself. I mean, if you have been on a plane, the pilot will tell you, put on your oxygen mask before you put on your neighbor's
Somebody else's.
oxygen mask. Yes, you can't be dragging through the mud and trying to help. You have to help yourself. Take some time off. When's the last time you cuddled yourself like you would a child? You think because you're an adult you don't need cuddling? Yes, you don't have to have a spouse to cuddle. Everybody can do this right now, Do this right now, everybody. Go ahead, Rev. Yes, that's a self-hug. And you can just be there with that, the warmness you feel, and just meditate on that. Hug yourself, be gentle with yourself, especially us who work with people and work with suffering and distress. We need to take better care of ourselves. And give yourself permission not to be perfect. You're striving towards some amount of,
Right.
growth. But you don't have to be perfect. You're not alone in this. Go to a pastor, you have a therapist, a coach. And we have found that family support or social support is one of the greatest antidote against clinical depression. Yes, and anxiety, social support. And that is why, since COVID have attacked most of the senior citizens, visit the shut-ins, visit the people who cannot move, who have disability. The elders, they have been totally affected by COVID. And we know the death rate is higher, the mortality rate is higher among them. You have Miss Clark who live down the road. Her children are not here. How about visiting her, wearing a mask, or even a phone call? She might not be good at texting. Call. 5 minutes. 5 minutes can actually save a life and prevent a serious mental health breakdown. And so get back to a routine. Get to a routine. We have a thing that I want to mention. It's called moral injury. When those soldiers go to war and maybe a bomb hit off their friend's leg, you feel guilty because you didn't turn back and save him. But if you did turn back, you lose your life or maybe your leg. We have a lot of that going on. Sometimes you really have to let go of not being able to help everybody. I know we are helpers. Remember, COVID is also grief. We are losing things that we used to have before. The outdoors, we have to be putting on these masks. So it's a form of grief. So I'll skip some of these issues here, but remember, physical distance does not mean emotional distance. Again, reach out to your brothers and sisters, friends, even people who you are not akin to. Just reach out. Uncertainty is above our heads. Right now, we're not sure what will happen in next week. What about our children? I know this is a lot of information. So what about our children? Excessive internet use, not healthy. Cut it down. It can result in significant anxiety or hyperactivity. Let the children play. What about play? Children are not playing. A lot of kids are developing visual issues because they are stuck on the white light from the computers. Children learn by play, art, music, and so these are preventative. Make sure the child has a routine. Get up, wash the plate, do a routine, do some work. Preserve your children's mental health. And that is important. Remember to wash your hands. And I have here what we call face COVID, which F stands for focus on what's in your control. What can you control? Can you control? What can you control? What can't you not control? Acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. I feel happy, I feel sad, talk about it. Come back to your body, engage in what you're doing, and open up, don't suffer by yourself. Remember your values. Remember to identify, there are so many support resources out there. Disinfect, be distant. Focus on what's in your control again. And remember, you have some credible websites. Some people argue they're not so credible. The CDC website, World Health Organization, Pan American Health, Ministry of Health, and there's an app that if you feel like you want to learn some sleep hygiene to help reduce stress, you can write down that app and you can download it on your phone for free. It's CBT-I Coach, and it's an app. I can share the slides with you, Rev, so
Yes,
that
sir.
individuals can have it.
Would be appreciated.
Sure. And so I end with just mentioning some quotes. One from Epictetus, Greek philosopher, said, "Men are not afraid of things, but of how they view them." And Latouz said, "There is no illusion greater than fear." Psalm 94:19, "When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought me joy." And we can all say this together, and I believe we know it, because I know I'm in a church environment. Timothy, 2 Timothy 1, verse 7. And let us all say together. You can unmute your mic if you so desire. For God has not given us a spirit
of
of
fear,
fear, but of
but of
power
power and
and
of
of
love
love and of a
and of a sound
sound mind.
mind.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Barnett, for this extensive and really critical presentation at this time. I noticed that, well, there are a couple of questions really I'd like to put to you, even though I know I need to get out of here before COVID.
Yes.
Not protocols, the time cut off to get home. But I was told that there is a prevalence of mental illness in Jamaica, that approximately 3% of Jamaicans have a depressive disorder and 4.1 anxiety disorder. Now, I'm concerned whether women are more prone to getting these mental challenges or illnesses more than men.
Excellent question. And it has been shown, and based upon several studies and surveys, that women, especially during the COVID era, because of balancing, a lot of burden have been flung on women. And in terms of balancing life, a lot of women are also working and have to be playing double role. They have been inundated by many stressors. And so they have been manifesting and showing up at clinics and doctors' practices with symptoms of depression. So it has been more manifesting more from a clinical standpoint than men. But there's also the theory that more men are suffering, but they are numbing most of these symptoms through alcohol, smoking, and different forms of avoidance coping. So when a woman might be exacerbated or might be inundated by these symptoms, and women will go to a doctor more than a man. So it is still kind of difficult to know the true numbers, but we know more women are manifesting depression based on the clinical numbers. And anxiety.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
John, I think 3 John verse 2 says that, he quotes, "Beloved, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." So I'm wondering if Christians should not be immune to mental health issues or illnesses. And if they're not, how can the church be prepared during this time of pandemic to respond to mental issues?
Great question. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer it, but one of the things that I that I will say is what the church is doing extremely right now by having clinicians come in and support to educate church members about certain aspects of mental illness. And to remember, it's always good to find the sources within the book of rules, the great Bible, to point to men of that era who suffered from depression, like David. And there are so many Psalms that mention how he suffered and struggled with. I'm not a theologian, so correct me if I'm wrong, but he suffered with depression. And if you look at many men of the
Yeah,
Bible, they
yeah.
call out to God during that time of depression. The thing with depression is there are many antidotes to depression and especially anxiety in the Bible. And if you remember, I quoted 46, I think it's 45 or 46. By learning, be still. I think we as Christians too, we live too much in the past and in the future, you know. So it is good to learn to live in the present. So maybe the church um, can become more open to different aspects of mental health, even from a biblical standpoint, and to expose some of the symptoms to the church, because a lot of people will have severe mental health issues, and they're not separating demonic influences or demonic possessions from manifestations of mental illness or a combination. So maybe those who are more learned and called in theology and who are exposed to different aspects of mental health should come in and educate the church members.
Yes.
Yes, we are all humans, and if you can catch a cold, you can catch depression. You can have depression. It's natural. It's normal.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have
Thank you.
one last question for you, though. Does genes heredity does it have anything to do with one's capacity to deal with mental challenges, mental illness?
Well, sure. Thank you for that question too. It has been shown that there are some people who, by virtue of genetics, they call it epigenetics, have learned or have this predisposition to deal with afflictions. Now, not to go too deep into that aspect because the evidence
Yes.
is still low in certain regards, but in regard to people who are prone to different mental health disorders like bipolar, schizophrenia, or major depression, it has been shown that if they learn resiliency skills, like even you mentioned about the children, teaching them how to attack life, teaching them how to be tough, psychologically hard, then they can reduce their risk of becoming mentally ill. So even if one person is disposed, 10 people in the family has bipolar, they can prevent it by learning strategies. So yes, you can interrupt certain aspects of um, gene predisposition, by your lifestyle.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Dr. Barnett. As we close out this evening, I just want to read a couple insights that I gathered as I tried to prepare. According to the American Psychological Association, we often do not recognize the acute effects of stress and pressure on our bodies until we develop some physical symptoms of mental illness. Our mental state of mind takes its toll on our physical health, our emotional well being, and even our intellectual health as we begin to experience cracks in the foundation that bring lasting consequences. Because we understand that mental health is not a destination, but it is a process. It begins at birth and travels through childhood, adolescence, into adulthood. A definition I learned of mental health is that it includes our emotional, psychological, and social well being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of our lives. So, Doc, we want to thank you so very much for taking time out. And we know you don't have an easy schedule, and especially now during this COVID period.
Yes,
We thank you so much for preparing to share with us this evening. on this important topic. And there's so much that we have heard. I don't know how much of it we would have retained, but like you said, you will share the slides and I will try to get it across to our churches so that people can sit down and again look at what you have done. We pray God's blessing on you.
Thank you.
And that as you continue to use your skills and abilities and your talents and your learning, that you will continue to be a blessing wherever you go, and that God will keep you protected during this pandemic. Even though I know you must have had your vaccine by now. I know one of the concerns is if people don't believe, they will not take the vaccine.
Yes.
But it's just like a man who is sick will not go to the doctor until he believes he's sick. So you're right. We need to get to the point where we change our thinking and begin to take care of ourselves. Develop the kind of resilience that we need during this time and make sure that we do what we need to do to protect ourselves, and in protecting ourselves, we will protect others. Our mental health affects every other area of our lives, including our spiritual well-being. And we come in the context of most likely 100% of those who are with us this evening are Christians. And Christians are not immune to the natural disasters that are going around. We are not immune to the pandemic. We have heard of ministers dying. We know of Christians who have died because they have caught COVID or died from some other illness. So we have been educated this evening, and please let us make sure that we take care of our mental well-being, because it affects how we relate to others and what happens to our connection with our Heavenly Father. Again, Dr. Barnett, we give you all the praise. We thank you so very much. And for all our viewers in the virtual space, either on Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube, thank you for spending a wonderful evening with us. Take care of yourselves, wear your mask, take your vaccine, sanitize, wash your hands as often as you can. And even though you have to take the 6 feet distance, don't isolate yourself, communicate with others. Again, I thank you ever so much for joining us. See you on Saturday evening, same place, same time, and we will again share with you on this pandemic. We go out now with a beautiful song that comes from Tasha Cobbs.
God, you're so good. Has he been good to you? I love you, Lord, for your mercy never failed me. In all my days, I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. Hey! 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good, yeah. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, the darkest nights. You were close like no other. I know you as a father, and I know you as a friend. I have lived praise it together. Sing all my life you have been faithful. Has he been faithful to you? Hey! All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Let's raise it up. Say your goodness. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it's running after. Shout it out. Say your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Yeah. Your goodness is running after, it keeps running after me. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. Say all my life you have been faithful. 'Cause you're a faithful God, yeah. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. If he's been good, raise up. Oh, somebody raise up your worship in the room. He's always been faithful. He's always been faithful. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Somebody shout it. Your goodness is running after, it's running after. Keep it right here. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. One more time. Say your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after, it keeps running after. My life laid down, with my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Shout it out, say, your goodness is running after, it keeps running after me. Woo! Come on, worship her. Lift up a praise to the only faithful God. Raise up a praise 'cause he's good. Raise up a shout 'cause he's good. You are good, you are good, you are good, you are good, you are good. It's running after me. Your goodness is running out. It's running you down. It's chasing you down. It's chasing you down. Nowhere you can go. There's nowhere you can go.